writers and readers, I'm Christy Stratus, and today I'm talking about a book from the Best Fantasy Book Subgenre Reading Challenge. And today's book is Three Hearts and Three Lions by Paul Anderson. This book was really, again, not one of my favorites, so I got two in a row that I really didn't care for too much. It was a nice short one, so it was pretty easy to get through, but it just wasn't for me. So one of the things that wasn't for me about it was I started reading it, and I said, you know what, this is really kind of dry, and it's written in this very particular dry sort of way. I wonder if this is from the 50s. And sure enough, it was published in 1953. So I don't have enough experience reading books from the 50s, even though I watched a million movies from the 50s. I don't think I have enough experience actually reading books from the 50s to say that all of them have a particular style, and I don't think you can ever blanket like a generation of books that way. But I can say that I have read enough books, generally, to say that one of my least favorite things that can happen in books from the 50s and around that time is dry writing. It's a certain type of, mostly a lack of showing and a lot of telling, and just a dry way of telling, and more like a textbook, sort of like moments that are like a textbook. One of the moments that really did have good showing instead of telling, so it did happen in there, but just not as often as I would have liked, was when the main character meets the witch. And there's really good description of the whole situation and what the witch does and what she's like. If the whole book was written like that part, I probably would have liked it a lot better. But there were sections that, one sentence would be dedicated to something that kind of mattered, and Paul Anderson would just move on from there. And then there were sections that were longer that didn't really matter that much, so I just felt like the balance for me wasn't quite right. The other part I didn't particularly like about it was there was the character Hughie, and he had an accent, and Paul Anderson wrote his accent in. And when you do that, you have to be really careful that it's very easy to understand. And I had a really hard time understanding it. I actually ended up skimming through most of what Hughie said, and in some cases skipping over it a little bit, but most of the time I skimmed it to see if I could get anything out of it. But I just really didn't get a lot of the words. I didn't understand what he was saying, and there was a particular word in there that I was sort of like, every time it came up I was like, what does it mean? I don't understand. So I got really frustrated with Hughie, honestly, and there was nothing wrong with his character. It was really just his accent and the way things were spelled. It was just too hard for me to understand, so that really took away from it. It detracted from the character for me, and it detracted from the book in general. I did not find the same problem with Eleonora, if that's how you pronounce it. That's one of the troubles with fantasy books. You never know how to pronounce the names, and I always pronounce them wrong. But Eleonora did not have the same type of thick accent that was written in a way that was so difficult to understand. It was much closer to like a mix of Scottish, Irish, British type of thing that I really didn't have any trouble with. It was only here and there that I would think, what exactly is that? And I was usually able to figure it out. So the author did have the ability to write an accent in a way that could be understood, but it just didn't work out for me with Hughie. All in all, I would have to say that if I was looking for a hard fantasy example, this was not the one for me. I didn't really get the whole hard fantasy thing out of it. I think I would need to read something else and see what that's like to see if I really like the subgenre of hard fantasy, because I didn't think that this was a good example for me in particular, and I didn't really see the hard fantasy elements that I was looking for. So I couldn't really judge it by this, and I think I'd have to read something that was a little bit more modern, because like I said, the 50s writing style is just not for me from what I've experienced of it so far. One interesting thing that I learned about Three Hearts and Three Lions is that it was part of the beginnings, or maybe the basis of games like Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought that that was really cool. Even though I don't really play things like that, I still think it's a cool part of history, so it was nice to read a book that had that kind of impact, especially outside of just the book industry. If you liked this book, let me know down below, and let me know if you think that it does suit hard fantasy. And if you like this video, please like it below, subscribe to my channel for more of these weekly videos, and I'll see you soon.